And we are back with another episode of ClubCast, the official podcast of the Diamond Club. We are on episode 9 with a new look, looking a little bit better, a little more professional as we get closer to October and we're going to start pumping out a lot more content. But like I said, we're on episode 9. At the time we're recording it is Thursday night. A lot of games are wrapping up here. And the Orioles just clinched the American League East for the first time since 2014. So congrats to them. But yeah, we got a couple games left just this weekend series, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the regular season for 2023 will be coming to an end. And there's a lot to take away from this year because a lot of stuff happened this year. Rule changes, a lot of teams that were surprises, a lot of teams that have been disappointments. But just to get a general understanding, how would you not just as like a Phillies fan, but like a general baseball fan, how do you view the 2023 season compared to years before?
It's crazy. It's crazy this time of the year, man. It's because you remember exactly where you were opening day, thinking, "Hey, we have 162 games in front of us," and now it's 3 games left, and we're like, "Damn, we got a month of baseball left." It sucks. It sucks, but we're getting the best baseball. That you're gonna see now in the next month. Yeah, man. Rule changes. That was a big thing coming into the season. I really enjoyed the emphasis on base running and stolen bases, things like that. That's just the way I played. It's the way I like playing. Um, that was real fun to watch. Even though I know we all like to talk shit about the pitch clock and the bigger bases and stuff. But that was fun. Yeah, pitch clock, another rule change. Honestly, it helped. We all like to talk shit, but it ended up helping. I don't like the postseason. It's still being there, but we'll deal with it as it is. Good baseball, man. Real good baseball on both sides. A lot of tight races. Not really many, standout teams that you think are just going to wash the rest of the league. The underlying thing though, injuries. It sucks, but injuries. That's kind of what plagued the season. A lot of big names going down, but it's been fun. I'm really excited for the postseason. Like I said, there's a lot of teams that could win. It's not going to be a Dodgers Astros like every other year, like something like that. I think there's a lot of competitive teams, so we'll see what's going to go on.
Yeah. There's a lot to take away from baseball, not just as a sport, but as an industry for this season. And a lot of people say baseball's dying, it's losing money, the views are going down. Just digging into it, you can rebuttal all of those because
Mm-hmm.
as much as we give shit to the owners and Rob Manfred and all these guys that are in charge of baseball, the biggest win that baseball's probably had in years is probably the rules that they implemented this year that we were all a little shaky on because, baseball fans, we don't like change. Um, and some of the changes that were implemented were pretty drastic. Like there was really no like smooth transition. It was hard cut. Like right when spring training started this year, went right into effect. Whether it's the pitch clock, the pickoffs being limited to just 3, bigger bases, you name it. These players had to adjust on the fly, and we saw that in spring training in the early regular season, where a lot of teams were still having issues adjusting. Some players didn't fully adjust right. But as we gotten more and more games and the season went further and further along, I'm pretty sure when's the last time you've seen an actual pitch clock violation? Like for the Dodgers, I haven't seen one probably. I think actually there was one the other day against David Peralta who took a little bit longer to get in the box, but that was probably the first one I've seen since like July.
I was going to say, other than Craig Kimbrell, probably none.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, like for East Coast baseball fans that can watch their team, or any baseball fan that can watch their team where they play, the game time doesn't really matter maybe as much. But for me, when I'm watching the
Yeah.
Dodgers and most of their games start at 10 o'clock, I am extremely happy that the games are now 2.5 hours, at least for the regular season. You mentioned the postseason. I do think it's going to be interesting for this first round next week, how teams adjust to that because big moments, man. Like you saw in the playoffs, like not only are you reacting to it as a fan, the players are reacting to the atmosphere, the stadium, and the fans, and just kind of like saying, like what Harper said, I just did that. Like like it's something that I'm super worried about because I feel like those moments are what you can't. That's what separates other sports compared to baseball because I feel like the celebrations that they have is a lot better compared to most sports. But going back to just the rule changes, just to spit off a bunch of numbers, I mean, the MLB set out to do one thing with these rules, and that was to get attendance up, shorten games, and then create more action. And they checked off all three boxes this year. Attendance is up all around baseball. Time of game is down compared to last year, and there's more runs and stolen bases per game. And we've seen it. More guys are stealing bases. I mean, Acuna, he, for as much shit we like to talk about him, he's now all alone at the 40-70 club. So, but everything around, I think the pitch clock has been a good start for MLB baseball, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more slight rule changes as we get further and further along with more technology.
It's interesting because on face value, I mean, like you said, the pitch clock looks good. I agree with you with the postseason thing. It's definitely going to be different. I think they're going to find ways to get around it, like when the catcher walks, out in front of the plate, or the umpire brushes the plate off, or something like that. Because you can't, like, come on, man. Could you imagine some of these big moments, like? I don't want to say it, but could you imagine if Jordan hits that fucking homer in Game 6 of the World Series, and then the next batter comes up and gets a pitch clock violation? Like, how gay that's going to be.
Yeah.
But the real thing, we talked about it, is the long-term effects, I think, of the pitch clock and those kind of things. The effects on, statistics, awards. You talked about the elbow. There's a lot of things long-term. That we need to really look into on that kind of things. But right now, I mean, it looks good, man. Like you said, this was one of the most successful things they've done in a while. Nobody really likes Manfred and, the front fucking offices of MLB baseball. But it's nice to see that they did something right. And like you said, with the with the late games, oh my God, when we were out in LA and in Arizona, 2 o'clock in the morning, no thank you. Like you're not getting no viewership on those games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to see them do something well. And like I said, I don't think there's going to be any. I think they're going to find ways around in the postseason.
Yeah, I hope, and we'll be seeing in the next couple days.
Yeah,
This time next week, we'll have a little taste of how these postseason teams adapted to all that. But we mentioned the Orioles, who are now the AL East champs.
yeah,
Like we said, congrats to them. But staying in that division, a team that had a lot more ambitions at the beginning of the season seemed to go on a downward spiral. Baltimore Orioles, they
AL.
win the division instead of the Rays. The Rays have had a lot of bad things happen to them this year. I feel very bad, from the Wander Franco situation. Yanni Diaz has a hamstring issue. Brandon Lowe's out for, I think, 4 to 6 weeks. That's some pretty big hits to that team. But, something that their fans have been looking forward to is hoping that they don't leave. And they came to an agreement with the city that they're going to rebuild a stadium, a whole new stadium in St. Petersburg. How do you feel about that for Rays fans, getting a new stadium? Because we've all seen the Trop, the Phillies, they've played a World Series there. We kind of see some games over there on TV from time to time. But, I mean, just looking at that stadium, there's a reason why tickets there are like $4 or $5. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. It's definitely a big portion of the reason why the Rays aren't much more massive franchises because of that stadium. I mean, they've been one of the more successful teams over the last, I mean, you could say decade, but more than a decade now. Like you said, they played in a World Series in 08. I mean, $1.3 billion is the investment into the stadium. $6 million for the whole compound between parking lots, other stuff they're putting up. It's beautiful, man. And I know you saw it. We posted it on Twitter, things like that. Only 30,000 seats, which is a little different, but they can accommodate up to 35,000 for specific events. 3 different seating levels, fixed roof, so just another one like the Trop. You kind of have to have that down there in Tampa.
Yeah.
But it's just nice. I think it's nice to see that they're not leaving, like you said. It's not a bad baseball area. I think the infrastructure and transportation and emphasis on the actual experience is the problem. I think that the new stadium will definitely help out with that. I mean, I'm sure they're gonna have crazy stuff like pools and
Yeah.
raised tanks and stuff in there. But yeah, it's gonna be nice to see the Rays having something that kind of fits their motto, like something like, "Hey, we're good now. Let's have a good stadium behind us."
Yeah, I definitely think this is good for baseball. Everyone wants to see a relocation or expansion. I'm kind of wary on that because I right now I think the league it's perfect. We got the right amount of teams. The divisions are all evenly spread out. Um, and I think a team like Tampa, who, like I mentioned, they've been to two World Series since one in
Mhm.
2008 and one in 2020. They've been one of the most successful franchises. Since 2018, this team is 507 and 358 since that time. That's a winning ball club. That's
Good.
that's that's a team that wins, and they find different ways to win with the payroll, and that can be a whole
Mhm.
biopic on its own.
Yeah.
But the Rays, Florida, it seems like it's cursed for being a sports town. But when the time is right, it seems like Rays fans still do go and watch that team play, especially for the postseason. They will watch playoff baseball, and you mentioned that it was interesting that it's only 30 to 35,000. I think that's perfect for Florida because I
Yeah.
feel like some teams go really big and they think like a lot of these old stadiums from the 80s, 90s, the reason why they all got demolished is because they tried to build big ass coliseums that were holding hundreds of thousands of people. And I know I said MLB attendance is up, but it's not. That's not how it is in Florida. They have to think, well, how can we make money off of this? So 30,000, that less seats, maybe more competition. Maybe now most of their games are sold out now.
Right.
The biggest issue that I have to this that I know multiple people that follow the Rays have tweeted out and written articles about is just you mentioned the infrastructure around it and the transportation, and that seems to be the biggest issue. So St. Petersburg is around 30 to 45-minute drive from Tampa, which is where technically, the Tampa Bay Rays. And that's been a big issue for most fans have complained about is just getting down there.
Mhm.
Because there's really only like two bridges to get over the water that's there to get there. So if there's traffic and they're stuck. So, this can be successful, but the Rays and the people in like that whole political office, they need to get into agreements because not only does this help the Rays out make money, this helps the government make money too. So they need to think of different ways to build more ways to get transportation down there, like speed rails, better buses, and all that. Like we were at Dodger Stadium, we saw how like the parking lot's huge, but there was Uber
Yeah.
stations, all these other things. They had bus transports. They had the train, the trolley. They had all of it just to get to the stadium itself to get as many fans as possible to that stadium. Because time and time again, that stadium usually sells out, and the Rays could do that. They could do that, and they could probably theoretically just be the most popular team in Florida. Like besides, I guess like the Miami Heat. I mean, like the Marlins, they don't really have a crowd. Um,
The Dolphins.
Unless you're talking about college football and you got the Florida Gators,
Oh
that's
yeah.
probably the only thing I could think of.
Miami,
So,
baby.
or Miami, yeah. So, other than that, it's kind of the Rays. I'm glad they're staying and they're trying to work it out. But from everything we've seen from the stadium and their plans, it looks cool. So I hope in 2028, me and you take a trip down to Tampa and go to that stadium because I'm definitely that's like a bucket list thing. So because I thought about going to there this year, but I
Yeah.
was like, I don't think I want to go to the Trop. So because that stadium's ugly.
No, man, it'd be cool to go down there, but I don't think actually being there would be cool. I think just
Yeah.
it would be cool to be down there.
But yeah, so awesome for the Rays. I'm glad that they're doing that. Obviously they've had some things go on, but so this is a nice win.
Right. Rare W for the Rays.
Rare W this year. And 2028. I don't know who they're marketing. It's probably not going to be Wander Franco.
Nope, not
So
anymore.
it's, I don't think he was on any of those, like how they had
Yeah,
the billboards of the players on it. I
yeah.
don't think he was on there.
I'd
So,
hope not.
but yeah, so it's awesome for the Rays.
That's funny.
Speaking of something that's awesome, these wild card races, AL and NL, they aren't finished yet. Your Phillies clinched the 4 seed the other day at home on a walk off. So they hold that in sole possession. Other than that, the last 2 seeds in the National League are pretty much up in the air. And in the American League, it's pretty much a battle between the AL West, whoever wants to win that division, and the 2 runner-ups, and then the Blue Jays, depending on which team. It seems like this roundup is really about which team actually wants to win, like maybe 1 or 2 games just to get in.
Yeah.
So, and they've all failed to do that. You know, you got the D-backs losing multiple games. You got the Marlins playing. They're playing probably the best out of all these teams right now. I think someone on one of the other shows I watched, I think they're 14-8 compared to all these other teams that have like near 500 or under 500 records. And then the outlier team, I swear I'm giving them fucking devil magic. The San Diego Padres are still technically alive. Um,
Yeah.
it would be shocking if they ended up getting in, which seems super unlikely, but they are technically the last National League team that's still alive with elimination number at 1. They hold the tiebreaker over, I'm pretty sure, I think all of them, D-backs,
Yes.
Marlins, Cubs. And then we didn't even mention the Cubs, who they've had a tough time in Atlanta this weekend. So I'm interested to see, what race is more interesting to you, and then what do you make of it? Because it just seems like nobody wants to get these playoff spots.
I think that's funny when you brought that up because it kind of reminds me almost of the 2020 season when you got into that playoff race. The Phillies were way up. There was other teams that were, rolling, and then they all collapsed, and the Marlins made the playoffs. Like teams like that. Now we're back here again. Teams collapsing. The Marlins are like a game out. So what are we doing? I don't know. I think, like you say, it's a lot of losses, but the NL is fun, man. I obviously we've always been NL guys, but it's just you have a lot of young, exciting teams there. Like when you look at the AL, Blue Jays are obviously fun. Nobody likes the Astros, but they're fun to watch sometimes. Mariners are fun too, but they've been collapsing. Really, they lost as of Tuesday. They lost 4 straight. I didn't check last night, but and then going into the other teams, Minnesota is not going to be fun to watch. I don't really want to watch the Rangers, but the Diamondbacks are cool, man. They got some young guys. You know how much we love the Cubs and with Cody Bellinger and all those guys. Phillies are obviously one of the funnest teams to watch. Braves, fucking Dodgers, all those teams. I think the NL is just more fun just because the energy level and the play style in the NL. But the AL is like a crapshoot. It's more of a crapshoot than NL for me. I think it really could be any of those teams. I said it last time, and I said it every other podcast. You can't not bet on the Astros, but they're gonna make me not bet on them because they've been playing so bad. I know they have the Diamondbacks. We talked about they have the Diamondbacks this weekend, so they have to get through that and try to hold off the Mariners and stuff and the other teams. But what are we really hoping for out of these teams? We're leading up to this race about how exciting this is, but do you see the Marlins beating the Brewers? Do you see these teams beating these other guys? I think you have your top 3 teams almost in each league, and then it's kind of like playing for second place. You're just playing to get in. We said that last year with the Phillies, we're just playing to get in, and we ended up making a run. So you never know. But it just seems like there's a big disparity between the teams who are already in and the teams who are still fighting for a spot.
Yeah, I kind of went back and forth with this one, especially earlier in the week when we were getting ready, with our notes and everything. And at that time, I was kind of leaning American League because I was like, it's going to be really interesting if the Astros miss the playoffs. And they, at that time, they really were I kind of thought they were going to miss the playoffs. Out of all the stuff I've said about them holding them to this high standard. I mean, how could you not? Like, they've been to 6 straight American League Championship Series. They've won the division countless times, and they show time and time again that they can beat you in a variety of ways. For whatever reason this year, they've lost like so much mojo, I guess. I don't know. It seems like they're not winning good games. This was interesting. I was watching, I think it was Talking Baseball. The Astros have a losing record at home. Like, they don't have a winning record at home. They have more wins on the road than they do at home. And I mean, there's two things you could take from it. There's one big thing you could take from it.
Yeah.
I guess it's because they're not cheating anymore. And then the other thing is maybe they're just not playing with as much fire, because anytime they go on the road, even now, they still get booed to death.
Yeah.
So I like as most players, some people live for that. So I know the Astros do, because they actually have a really good record on the road this year. But they kind of kicked things back into gear. They took care of business against the Mariners, kind of putting their season on the outside looking in. So it's kind of looking, unless the Blue Jays collapse or the Astros, it looks like the kid on the outside looking in is going to be the Mariners, and they may just miss by a game or two. So I hope the Mariners find some way to get in, because that's an exciting team. But if they don't, then they don't. But looking at the National League, man, I mean, you mentioned a lot of these teams, their mentality is like, let's just get in. Like, we haven't been in the playoffs in a while. Like the Marlins, I mean, they made it in 2020, but they haven't made it in a full 162 since 2004, which I thought was crazy.
Really? I didn't even...
In their franchise, besides 2020, if you count that out,
Right.
the only time that they've made the playoffs was twice, and they won the World Series in both of them. That's it. So don't let the fish get hot, because I don't know what's going to happen. But, they have a lot of stuff where their goals, like, yeah, they may just say, yeah, we want to win the World Series. It's not. If they make the playoffs, that they would take that season as a win. Skip Schumacher, first-year manager over there, like the second youngest in the league. If he got the Marlins to the playoffs, I think most people in that organization would take it as a win. But do they have a fighting chance against the Brewers? Yeah. I mean, I don't have a lot of confidence in the Brewers besides their pitching.
Yeah.
But as we see in the postseason, anything can happen. My biggest team to watch, besides like I think the Phillies, like we've already discussed, they're on that top tier with the Dodgers, Braves. Like those three teams have World Series aspirations.
Right.
A team that I think can make noise that we talked about before the show was the Diamondbacks, because I feel like in a short series, they could get away with it with using Gallen and Merrill Kelly in those 1-2. That's a really good 1-2 punch. You mentioned, that's what the Phillies kind of ran off. They had that 1-2 punch. Third game and third and fourth game, they kind of just put it together if they needed it. And then they got timely hitting, and that's all you need in the playoffs. And I feel like the Diamondbacks could be a stingy team to watch. They're lined up to play your Phillies at the bank. So good luck to them dealing with those fans there. But that is a team I would watch. But I just think the National League's way more competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And the wild card, having so many teams still technically in it that are exciting. Like, I mean, we hate on the Padres. I wouldn't say hate. We laugh on the Padres here. But, they're an exciting team. They have a lot of good, exciting players. The Reds, they have a lot of good young talent. They're technically still in it. The Marlins, a lot of their players like that I would like to see in the playoffs, like Alcantara, that like they're not going to be there if they make it this year. I'm going to lean the National League. That's more interesting, just because I think obviously everyone's going to pick the Braves as the favorites, but I feel like any one of those teams, like from 1 through 6, could make a run at the World Series if everything goes right. Because we've seen it last year, like the playoffs, you could be the favorite. That shit doesn't matter. Like, it just depends on who's hot at the right time, who's hitting the well, who's pitching well. And if it's at the right time in October, then that's a team representing the National League or the American League or whatever. So I'm super excited to see these wildcard matchups when they're finalized and someone decides to step up and win. Maybe the Cubs, maybe the Marlins, hell, maybe the Padres get in. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But they have a battle to climb against the Brewers and the Phillies. That's for sure, though.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you with the Diamondbacks thing. Pitching is always going to win in the playoffs, and short series are always scary. I'll ask you this too, because I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious, and I'll say it because it's my podcast, but I know their pitching is good, but like we have the best top three lineup like in baseball. Like, do
Yeah.
you think the Dodgers would be able to hit these pitchers in like a short game series like that?
I mean, it really depends because I've seen Kelly pitches horrible against the Dodgers. He
Yeah.
does. I think he has like one career win and an ERA over 6. Gallen would be the only one that would scare me, but
Right.
it seems like it's just the short game series. Like that's the reason why I was like, at the beginning of the season, I was like, all right, maybe the Dodgers are a wild card team, like everyone's predicting, but if we can really skip that and get like into the division series without playing that wild card round, I would take it. Like any team would take it, because you never know what's going to happen in a 3-game series. It's just like in the regular season, a 3-game series. I know it's different month, different pressure, and all that stuff, but you could drop a 3-game series 2 out of 3 to a bad team, and I've seen the Dodgers do that. I mean, the Phillies probably are feeling good anyway. They're coming off a NL champion season, and they're pretty much firing on all cylinders. Like Trey Turner has been hitting out of his mind for the past 2 months. Schwarber's still hitting homers. Harper seems like he's as locked in as he's going to get.
Yep.
And then you got the other guys that we haven't even mentioned, like Castellanos, Brandon Marsh, like all these guys collectively, they know what the job is. So they have, for compared to teams that now have goals, like the D-backs, like I said, they're still going to have a battle up climb, but like if good pitching is going to, like you said, good pitching is going to beat good hitting. Like I've seen good lineups in my time watching LA lose to just good pitching throughout like the playoffs. Like the Padres shut us down last year. Mookie wasn't hitting, Trey wasn't hitting, and even Freeman, for as good of a hitter as he is, he didn't hit a lick in that series last year. So I still have confidence in the Phillies, but
Yeah.
just being 3 games worries me. If I was a Dodgers fan and they were in that situation, I'd be like on my seat a little bit more compared to the DS.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I'm definitely more worried about the Diamondbacks than I would be about say the Cubs and people like that. Even though the Cubs have good top end starters, but it's not like the Diamondbacks. It's really a toss up though, because you don't know. Game one is obviously going to be Zach Wheeler. Like we talked about, probably Merrill Kelly, because I think Zach Allen's lined up for game two. You could lose that game. The Braves came into CBP. This is obviously the DS, which is a 5-game series, but they came into CBP with their best pitcher. Yes, he was banged up, but did they think Strider was going to give up 5 runs in 3 innings? No. Like you don't expect stuff like that. If game 2 is Nola versus Gallen, Nola could go out and give up 5 runs in 5 innings. We've all seen it. Like you don't know. You just hope that your lineup can at least keep you in there, because if not, you're going to end up like the Cardinals last year, where their stars disappeared. I mean,
Yeah.
Nolan and Goldschmidt had opportunities to get drive-in runs in game 1, and they both struck out. Nolan's making errors. It's you really need your guys to step up, and I think, like you said, the bank is going to make them feel. It's almost like the Astros thing. Like I want to touch on that too, but the Astros go into enemy territory and they know they're going to get booed, and they know they're going to hate that. They hate them.
Yeah.
They're like, we love this shit. Let's eat off it. That's what's going to make them go. Philly is built off their fans and the vibe and the aesthetic. I think the only thing that keeps me from worrying about that 3-game series is it being at home. I think that's the only real thing that keeps my vibe up.
Yeah, I think the Phillies have a good advantage just because out of all the wildcard teams, they're the one that's probably the hottest. I mean, the Brewers have been playing good ball, but if I'm going to take my money on anyone, it'd be the Phillies at home with the way they're playing right now. Like this month and August, like they've been playing really good baseball. And at this last stretch, I mean, all these other teams except for the Marlins, it seems like they don't want to make the playoffs for whatever reason. So it's definitely going to be interesting, when the first round of playoffs like get over there. But we'll have to see. I mean, Phillies, they're obviously going to be the favorite no matter who they play, especially being at home. But we've seen worse things happen. We've seen more heartbreak. Um, we've been there, so we understand that you can't take any game for granted. So, and the Phillies know that more than anybody, and the Brewers too. They won the division, but they have to play that wild card game, that round, with the way the new playoff format is. So, how do you think they would feel if they lost this first round too? Like, it'd be similar to the Cardinals last year. It's never guaranteed, so you got to fight for it. But I definitely like the Phillies' chances, especially being at home. I just think the Diamondbacks probably, if there's any team in that round that's going to make noise, it would probably be them. And then either way, whoever wins that matchup has to go up to Atlanta and take care of business there. So, but going off of that, a lot of teams we already mentioned clinched. We mentioned the Orioles winning their division. They clinched a postseason spot, I think, last week. Rays as well. Dodgers, Braves, they all clinched their division pretty early. And then the Twins, and then the only division that's undecided right now is the American League West, but it seems like the Rangers are definitely going to clinch a postseason ticket either today or tomorrow. But that begs the question, especially as we get to the final weekend of the regular season, a lot of the matchups or the seeding's pretty much finalized. The Braves won last night, so they finalized with the 1 seed. That means the Dodgers, they already clinched the 1 or the 2 seed last week, so now they're definitely the 2 seed, and the Milwaukee's definitely the 3 seed. So if you're a manager of any one of those clubs, or say these teams that have clinched that know where they're going, like for the Dodgers, like this weekend series against San Francisco and today's game, they essentially just don't matter. How would you go about that? Like, do they still go at 100% intensity, or do they take it back a bit?
I toss this around a lot because I'm not a guy to throw away games. Definitely, I think really there's 3 key things when you get down the stretch. If you're in, and like the Braves or or the Phillies, like you're locked in. Setting up your rotation is the number one thing. Like nothing else matters at that point, especially if you're a wild card team or a team that's going to be playing in the wild card. If you don't have your rotation set up, then it doesn't matter. So obviously you're going to play with it to try to get your guys on the right amount of rest, right? Like today, I think the Phillies threw somebody and they put Lorenzen in the middle of the game. Like they're just throwing random people in. Dylan Covey, I mean, you're a big Dylan Covey fan. He'll probably start one of these games this weekend. That's definitely the first key, I think. I think if you're playing your players, they need to play. I think each game, what I would do is rest maybe 2 guys, keep the rest in, play. I mean, like, don't not try, but obviously don't go out of your way to like hurt yourself, something like that. But you got to stay in a rhythm. I mean, you don't want to take your guys out for 2-3 days and then them come back in the playoffs and have to face somebody who's been playing the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's definitely that middle ground between getting them the rest they need because you're seeing fatigue and, like you said, the games don't matter really, but also not giving them too much time off to where they come out of that rhythm, especially for teams that are real hot like us, like these other teams that are real hot. You don't want them to come out of that rhythm. So I think it's a little bit of a middle ground. Pitching is key, but definitely I'm still playing my guys most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's like I go back and forth because I've seen certain things happen, like in 2019, or 2021, my bad, when Muncy got injured on the last day of the year and he was out for that entire postseason run. And that was a bat that the Dodgers desperately needed because, they were throwing Albert Pujols out there for regular starts, Matt Beatty, Steven Souza Jr., who,
Oh God.
like these guys, so did that injury affect the team in the long run? Yeah, it did. But baseball is a game about repetition and rhythm, and you can't just not play and then pick it back up again. It's not like football where you have like that whole week off and then you're playing that next game. Like these guys need to get their at bats. They need to get their reps in the field. or else they're just going to go cold. Some players can't really just pick it up at will. So I think what you said is kind of right. Play. Don't go out on like a play. Like, don't be diving for a ball in the gap. Like, just stay healthy. Try every way to stay healthy as best as you can. One thing that, Dave Roberts was asked this question the other day because they brought up, that's what came up to my mind with Max Muncy because they asked him about it. They were like, well, what makes you like, why is Mookie still playing like all 9 innings? Why is Freddie still playing like the game? And he said, these guys want to play. And obviously there's an injury risk, but that could be every day, anytime. Like the first playoff game could have an injury happen like right away.
Drive their
You're
car
not
into
gonna
the car.
you're not gonna question, oh well, why was he in the lineup in wildcard game 1 or whatever. For the wildcard teams, I mean, I think they have to play pretty much regular way, because they really get one off day for the travel, and then the wildcard series picks up right away. So that's why teams like the Phillies, they may mess with their pitching rotation because the games really don't matter that much, but the hitters are going to get all 4 at bats or more. They're going to stay in the lineup. You're not going to see much switching with that unless they're blowing somebody out. It's teams that like the Braves and the Dodgers that have the biggest risk of messing something up. And because the wild card changed from a game to a series, it delays the start time for the division series. Dodgers Braves last year, they had a whole week off.
Yep.
This year, they have a whole week off again. And both teams are actually going about it differently now. Now they're doing, I guess last year they were just doing their regular like workouts, warm-ups. Now they're doing sim games with their minor leagues. Because they got to stay ready because that's a long stretch of games to have off. And it definitely showed for both teams.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, the Phillies came up and ready to play, but, the Braves looked like they had no intensity and the Phillies had all of it. And the Padres were the same way. They won that wild card series against a 100-win team in the Mets, and they were ready to do it again against the Dodgers, who, like the Dodgers dominated them all year, and they ended up losing in 4 games. And it just looked like that the intensity wasn't there for LA besides that game 1 that they won. But other than that, it just looks like they were out of sync, not ready, not playing the way they were in the regular season. So I definitely think it's a debate. I'm glad I don't have to debate it. I can just talk about it. I'm not the one making the decisions about it, but it's definitely going to affect them in the long run. And both teams, like the Braves and the Dodgers, they acknowledged it. I mentioned it before, both of these teams, they were embarrassed of what happened last year, and they definitely don't want that to happen again. And the teams that are now with like the Orioles, they have the 1 seed. They're looking at what happened last year and how they have to prepare now this year. So I still think you have to go at maybe 90%, unless you're one of these teams that's still battling for a wild card spot or just a playoff seeding, like the Astros, Mariners, Blue Jays, and all the other teams in the National League that are all over the place. The 6 teams that are still technically in, they have to play at 110% just to get in, because anything less than that could any slip up and they're not even in the playoffs. So, but it's going to be interesting. I mean, I imagine most of the seeding is finished by Saturday night. I would say Sunday is the day where not much happens, and then you probably get the B lineups from everybody, every playoff team. They treat it like a spring training game, and then get their guys like in a bat for 4 innings, and then they're out. So we'll have to see. It just depends on where they're at in that time of the year. So, but it's coming close. Sunday, that's the last day of the regular season. So,
yeah, I definitely. I mean, we need to get somebody on here that disagrees with us because we think too much alike. But I definitely think what you said was right. Like momentum, it doesn't make sense like as a concept, but it's a thing. Like the Phillies and Padres went into that series knowing that they were them. Like they just won they like you said, they beat the Mets. We stomped the division winning Cardinals, and then they're going into these yes, albeit 100-win teams, but they just played. I mean, they were playing up until the last game of the regular season. They were playing all the way through the wild card, and now they're right back in it. Like you said, they had a week off before. You don't know how long they really were trying before then. But yeah, it's a momentum sport. You got to keep it up. I agree with you though. I think for most teams, there's not a lot of teams it's affected by, but for most teams, you'll see the B lineup probably Sunday, and other than that, probably not much else.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to watch. You know, we've already seen most teams clinch at least a postseason spot. It's really just like 3 spots left in the total playoffs for the league. So most teams will have a different method to what they do, but um, we're getting closer. So that's the only thing that we can look at and see what they do. But what, like we've mentioned, the Padres are technically still in the race. I don't know if a Marlins win eliminates them today. I think maybe the Marlins were one of those teams that could win like one game.
Yes.
And the Padres are technically still alive. But their elimination number is 1. We've talked about it in previous episodes and articles, how the Padres have kind of just been one of the most disappointing teams. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. There's no way around it. They are one of the most disappointing teams. You know, they led the league. They were near the top of the league in payroll this year. And when you have all these guys on there, Bogarts, Tatis, Soto, and you get in the Cy Young likely winner and Blake Snell, and then they can't make the playoffs. They're in the playoff race, and it was interesting because the other day, because they ended up losing another game in extra innings, where they just needed to get maybe a 4-out save from Josh Hader. And they asked Bob Melvin after the game if he was available, and they said that they already had their predetermined discussions that he's only a 3-inning pitcher, essentially. Don't quote me on exactly what they said, but yeah, it seems like he just didn't want to go in. You know, he's focusing on his pending free agency is what it looks like. How do you feel if you were, 1, in his shoes, and 2, say a Padres fan who's hoping on the outside looking in, just hoping they make the playoffs?
Yeah, obviously we don't know what was said. What we do know, I'll do it because what I'm guessing is you're going to side with the Padres and the fans. So I'll side with fucking Hader. He has never been used for 4 outs in the whole time, and he's been on the Padres. I don't like the way he went about it. When they asked him about it, you can quote me on this. He said, "Are we still in the playoff race?" Which, yes, you were at that time. I mean, albeit pretty far. But, dude, like, I can understand the free agency and all that kind of stuff, but you got to have some passion, man. You can't show to the fans, to the media. Like, it's the thing with the Strider. Even like what Strider said with the fans, how he doesn't like the fans. Even if it was satire, people are gonna eat that shit up. Wait until next year when Hader comes in for 4 outs. Twitter's gonna blow up, dude. Twitter's gonna blow up. Bob Melvin memes are gonna be everywhere, bro. It's gonna be insane. As a player, I don't hate it just because it really didn't matter. Like, come on, dog. Like,
in the grand scheme of things, it likely didn't matter.
right.
It's just fans are so nearsighted with this type of stuff, recency bias. So I can understand the frustration as a fan, but you know, it just is it is a bad look for him. I think it's a bad look for Hader. I think it's a bad look for the Padres management, like Bob Melvin. Like, you're the fucking manager. If you want him to go in, just fucking put him in. Like, raise your left arm and just put him in. Like, is he gonna not pitch? Yeah. Like, so I don't understand why there's much of a conversation about it. Like, you're in the playoff race technically, so just try to give it your all. I get that he's trying to save his body for free agency, and no matter what he does, whether it has a piss poor attitude about going in, or if he goes in and gives up a home run, like, he's still gonna get the bag. Like, nobody cares. They're gonna give him that money because he's literally probably been the best closer in baseball this year. He's probably, I think he only has like a less than a handful of blown saves. And he's just been dominant for a bad Padres team. So for the Padres, it kind of goes on what we talked about last time. You know, it just seems like they have a culture issue. and it's been highlighted by everybody. And I'm not trying to single Hater out because, I mean, it could just be miscommunication from himself to the media and Bob Melvin to the media. Because for what it's worth, when I watched the video of Bob Melvin talking, it looks like he does not fucking want to be there. So he probably doesn't care. I mean, Hater probably doesn't care because, I mean, realistically, there's 1% chance of making the playoffs. It doesn't look, it looks pretty bleak.
Right.
So, but the culture there, it seems like there's a lot more of a me than we mentality, and people have already beaten this dead horse to death. So until that changes in San Diego, don't really look at them probably running away with the division next year. Don't look at them probably running away with the wild card. Maybe because they have the talent, depending on what they do. And if everybody stays and they continue to go after it, I'm interested to see what they do. But the whole Josh Hader thing, I'm not going to hate on him because in my mind, like if I'm a player on the Padres with how their season has gone, they've probably been checked out since the beginning of September. So, I mean,
That's
you
what I
can't
think,
fault them
dude.
for that.
That's what I think. I think what you said with the culture thing is such a big thing. Like we saw it in Milwaukee. We saw it last. I don't want to bring it up. We saw it last year in the playoffs. Josh Hader like has energy, man. Like he's in. Like he loves baseball. I have never seen him like this dejected or whatever, subjected. Like I can understand where they're coming from. Like you said, yeah, you're in a playoff race, but like that 1% in like Philly or LA or Boston and that 1% in San Diego is two different things. Like
Yeah.
you said, they probably been checked out for weeks at this point. They probably that like when he said, "Are we still in the playoff race?" He probably thought they were out like two
Yeah, you
weeks.
probably thought they were already eliminated. So,
Right. I just think
um,
I think the culture is. I think that's a good point. I think the culture is more at risk here than Hater or Melvin.
yeah. And Hader, like, he doesn't care about that culture because
Yeah.
more than likely him and Snell are probably gone. I don't think the Padres, while they do have deep pockets, they have Juan Soto on their mind. So I
Mhm.
don't think they can afford all these guys to stay.
I agree.
Um, but yeah, so that about does it for this episode.
Yeah.
By the time of our next episode, which we will be live streaming on Sunday at the end of for the last regular season day to go over. Hopefully, everything's been clinched by then. Every team plays around middle afternoon, so we'll have more of a picture of what matchups look like for the wild card round and all of that. But it's interesting, October. I mean, it can make or break you. It's my favorite time of the year because playoffs, but baseball's ending and then your season can end just like that in a couple days. So we'll definitely have a lot of content here, both on our website and the podcast, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Definitely look for us out there. But yeah, get ready for postseason baseball. It's where the fun begins, right?
Yes, sir. We'll see Joe Davis again, so everything is right in the world.
Yep. So that about does it for us here at ClubCast. Have a good one.
Peace.